Okay, our next interview is with Dan Weinberg of Abraham Lincoln Bookshop. We're here at the New York International Antiquarian Book Fair. It's April 5th, 2014. And Dan, like I ask everybody, give us a little biopic. Tell us about your family life, your brothers, sisters, where you went to school, etc. Take us through that early part.
Well, I turned 70 yesterday. I was born 4/4/44.
Oh,
so
wow.
I get emails from all my exes going way back to high school all the time because everyone remembers it.
Yeah.
Born in Chicago of parents from, my father from outside Kiev, downwind of Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Little Blota, little mud flat. Yeah. And my mother from Poland. They're both Jewish, though. And they met here in Chicago. And they were in a play together, and my mother was on his lap for one scene, and as she said, she never got off. So, and I was born, as I said, 4/4/44, only child. They had one more kid who died after 2 days, so I was an only child. My father was a psychoanalyst, became head shrink in 1978. He was president of the American Psychiatric Association.
Wow.
He was a gerontologist. Geriatrics was his area and expertise. He was also, for that matter, responsible in the World Psychiatric Association, when he was president at the time of here, of having the Soviet Union's Psychiatric Association thrown out of the World Psychiatric because they were using their hospitals as prisons for political enemies.
Yeah.
My mother was a teacher of Judaica, Hebrew, and history, and knew it well. They're both intellectuals, and we didn't sit around talking about peanut butter. It was always meat and potatoes.
What was the language that was spoken in your house?
You know, they each knew Hebrew, they each knew Yiddish, and they wanted to Americanize me, so I know nothing but spattered English here and there.
It's a language that was used by our grandparents and parents, and I'm afraid that it's going to die.
Yeah. Oh no, there are people coming up with Yiddish now.
Yeah.
They really are. A cousin's kid of mine is taking Yiddish classes and knows it pretty well.
Okay. So what did you do? What college did you go to?
Well, I went to New Trier High School, and we lived outside Chicago, up north in Glencoe in the North Shore. Went to New Trier High School. And then I went around. I went to Washington University in St. Louis for a couple of years in pre-med. Figured out I didn't like blood. And I did that maybe for my father. If I could have become a psychoanalyst without med school, I probably would have gone into that.
Yeah, maybe jail to med school.
But so I switched over from Washington to Temple University in Philadelphia, and was there for 3 years and got my BA in history. Then I was talked into law school, and so I went to Indiana University for 1 year, went out screaming, "What? People do this?" And said, "No way." So I came here to New York at NYU, and I got my master's in history at NYU, going toward my PhD, but I was, in the meantime, working at a place called the late great Paperback City.
Oh.
And up on Broadway, I was living between West End and Riverside on 84th, and they were on 85th and 86th. And I worked there for a while, and I enjoyed what I was doing. That people would come in, and I would point out a book to them, and they'd buy it and come back and say, "Dan, that was great. Find me another
one."
And I liked doing that. So I went back to, and there were no teaching jobs in those days, and now even worse today.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I was going to be doing really, but I enjoyed that book world. So I kept fending off my parents and family. They were saying, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to open up a history shop, ha." So I went back to visit my parents one time, and a friend of my parents knew a man named Ralph Newman, who had this bookshop from 1938 called Abraham Lincoln Bookshop. So I met him and talked about books, and it was the right time for each of us. And he was looking for someone to eventually take it over, and it was a shidduch. It was a marriage, and so 43 years later, here I am.
Wow.
We were together for 13 and a half years, until we split. It was time for both of us to be away from each other.
Yeah.
And we got a little loggerheads for a while, Ralph and
What
me.
happened when you got close? You know, when you're close with someone like that, it's different philosophies sometimes.
You know, but we were also in different ages of our lives. I was so green.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know
You remember
anything.
those green days, don't you?
Oh, do I? I'd say, Ralph, how do you know this is worth that?
Yeah.
I'd say, well, I know.
Yeah.
You know, now
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, you know, and that sort of explains it. So you've been in Chicago at the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop now for 43 years.
Yes, it's in 1971, September.
Wow.
And the shop began, Ralph began the shop. He went into the book world in 1933 from minor league baseball.
Yeah.
And he opened a shop called Home of Books. And it was very close to the late Daily News newspaper in Chicago. And two journalists kept coming in. One of them was Lloyd Lewis, who wrote on Grant, and another guy named Carl Sandburg, who has some fame. And the two of them, they talked to Ralph about their love and turned him, as I say, toward the dark side. And he decided to specialize in Lincoln and the Civil War and changed the name of the shop in 1938 to Abraham Lincoln Bookshop.
Where it will remain forever. Yeah, knock on wood. Are you a person who is heavily involved in the internet? Are you a catalog guy? Are you a book fair guy? What does each avenue play in a role in your business?
Well, I sometimes call myself a monk because I feel what happened to the monks is happening to us when Gutenberg came by and swept the monks off the planet for what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so technology is doing that to us in a way.
Yeah.
And if we don't come to terms with that, we're going to die. So I've come to terms in this regard. I do video interviews just like we're doing now. For the last 8 years, I've started something called virtual book signing. And of course, because we specialize, I'm not only in the antiquarian side as we are here,
new books too.
but I need to have the in-print books, the new things that are coming out as well. And all of, every out-of-print book used to be new.
Yeah,
So
at
that's what
one
we're doing.
time.
So I have at least monthly 2 authors come in, and I sit at a table. We have a camera, we have lights and soundboard, and I discuss their books with them for an hour. And people can email in questions while we're live. And I've archived them for over 8 years now. I have them all archived on the web, on our site. So that's how I'm trying to keep people interested in what we're doing. It's entertainment as well as content.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've started another show, more peripatetic, I haven't kept it up, called The Artifact Whisperer. And that's moi.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I talk about artifacts that are in the shop, the stories behind them, their market value and why, artifacts in the news, ask them to bring in artifacts. I interview some of my clients about their collecting aspects of what they do so that other collectors will know that they're not alone in this world and they're mishigas.
Yeah, craziness. that
So,
goes on.
and of course, I'm on the web with A Libris, actually. I used to be with Abe, but for various reasons, mainly
Whatever.
credit cards, I'm not. And we have a big web presence, so we have to.
Oh yeah.
Everyone does.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if you don't keep up with technology, you're gonna be left in the cold.
Yeah.
When you first started in the trade, other than Ralph Newman, who were some of the people that influenced you or mentored you?
Terry Tanner comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, it was a
He
great
became a
bookseller.
great friend of mine early on, even though he didn't care for psychoanalysts, but he didn't diss my dad too much, so I still enjoyed being with him. So he was really a mentor to me as far as the professionalism he brought and the knowledge and research that he brought to pieces. And I learned that through him quite a bit.
Did you ever meet Wright House?
I never met Wright House. Richard Barnes was another one, by the way, in Chicago.
Richard Barnes was sort of like in the old part of Old Town.
Yes, he was in Old Town with that, but he was first in Evanston, where I first met him.
Right.
Went to Old Town, then back to Evanston.
Yeah.
So he was a bit of a mentor to me as well.
He was
and Clarence Wolfe over here.
course.
He was one of the earliest I met here in the ABAA. And he and I became friends. And so maybe those three are the ones I would say had most influence on me in the early days. And Hamill and Barker, the old ladies in Chicago who were just wonderful. And they too were people to look at and understand how to be a book dealer and a professional in this industry.
And Florence, of course.
And Florence, of course. She came in after me, so she had to look at me.
We're talking about Florence Shea, for those of you who are watching this video, who was a very important bookseller in the Chicago area who passed away recently, and Dan was kind enough to do the interview for the ABAA.
And she kept the ABAA going in the fairs in Chicago.
Yeah, she was very influential in that area.
Terry said, move aside and let someone else do it. She didn't really want it, but she said, well, okay, I will, and someone did, and then it fell apart. Yeah. And then they brought her back in.
She was always a strength for that show. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a couple of other questions. What are some of the aspects of the book trade that have changed since the internet has come upon us?
Well, I'll give you one example that happened to me recently, that I bought something at auction a couple of years ago, and I had it on my site, and a client called up and said, I know exactly what you paid for it, and I'll give you this. Take it or leave it.
So you left
So in that case, I left it. It was just too low. But that's part of it. Everything is known now.
Yeah.
And
No secrets.
No secrets anymore. It's such a double-edged sword that's one of the downsides, I suppose, and that everything is out there now. And so our clients can go right there themselves if they wish and, in a way, bypass a third party.
Absolutely.
But then again, we're not having postcards anymore from Jake and the old days and having to find out, 25 postcards come in for a book you're looking for. Now you know that book is not scarce anymore. There are 40 of them out there. Yeah. But at the same time, I too can get to something that I want.
Right.
And of course, it's so easy now to be able to make a sale on the same day, because you can, instead of faxing something, you can digitize it. You can beautiful image that can go right to the client, and they email back, and boom, it's gone. Yeah. So it's a push-pull, but it's there. And of course, what I worry about, I'm going to be gone, when books ain't going into space. And when we leave this planet, books will be gone out there in the with humans, they'll be gone. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I think books are hidebound to the earth.
Well, that might be so, but only time's going to tell about that one.
Yeah, well.
But can you see the first people to colonize the moon bringing along with them 2 boxes full of books? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that.
No.
I don't know if you are either.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not seeing that at all.
They're here only.
We talked a little bit now about some of the things have changed. What do you see as some of the challenges facing us as booksellers for the foreseeable future, maybe for the next 10 years? What are some of the big challenges?
Well, what we're all talking about, the young people, how are we going to get them involved in this? That they want to read for one and collect for another. They're not finding it at home anymore. Bookshelves are being taken out for large screen TVs instead. Yeah. And they don't see the people in their lives taking in books, taking in autographs, and preserving them, curating them for our generation, and enjoying them for what they are. So I think that's one of the real problems we have. How do we get the young people involved in all of this? And a bit I'm trying to, at least with cloth books in my area, that's what my virtual book signing is, at least. I'm able to go to places where the authors don't go. So Peoria, or a large, authors, Ron Chernow comes to my shop in Chicago, but he's not going to go to Peoria for a book signing, so I have to bring it to them via the internet. That's one way, hopefully, we can continue to have people. If we have to go to them, we have to go to them
Yeah.
and speak a bit in their language as well. And that's going to have to be on the iPhones, the iPads, and other technology. We're going to have to use that to interface with the young.
And the
I think that's
social
the
media.
biggest, and the social media. I think it's our largest challenge is how to keep that going.
Yeah, I think it pretty well will keep going. I'm encouraged also, Dan, to see so many youngish booksellers now members of the association.
There are more than we thought
Yeah.
would come in.
Yeah, well, there was one of the big worries was, you know, what's going to happen as this generation, our generation, dies off or retires? Where's the void going to be filled by? And I think I see a lot of young faces out there that look
It's
active.
better here. It's better here
Yeah.
than it is in other areas of my business existence. Civil War is a good example of that. And in the Civil War shows that I go to, and which is not highfalutin like this,
I know.
believe me. And there, everyone is gray, and we don't see kids coming into the Civil War.
Yeah.
And the studies of that. So, that's what could have happened here. I also feel that books are not as endangered as I once thought just a few years ago when the internet really was starting up and really getting going, and Kindle, and we all thought, oh my God, we were beating our
iPads.
breasts, you know.
iPad.
But I think I've seen people come back to books from iPad. They say, yes, we have the Kindle, I use the Kindle, but I really like books and I'm going to continue to use that, and I'll take this on vacation. I have a Kindle and I take it on vacation, so I don't have to take War and Peace and cloth.
Well, my wife has a Kindle and an iPad, but I still have my copy of Ulysses in paperback that I read. So,
I don't want to read
can't-
your first edition out, do you?
Well, it's too big for one thing. For another thing, it's too valuable.
That's what
to
I'm
leave
saying.
to-
Read the paperback.
So give me a paperback and Cliff Notes,
Yeah.
and I'll be okay.
There you go.
Those challenges are important to think about, but at the same time, we have a book trade that has all kinds of different folk in it. People from all different backgrounds and all different things, and I wonder if a young person came to you and said, "Mr. Weinberg, I'm thinking about becoming a bookseller. What would you advise him?" We're talking about 2014 now. We're not talking about 1994.
My first instinct is, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
That's my first instinct, it is.
But get past your first instinct.
Well, it's such a wonderful trade to be in. And it's such a wonderful lifestyle if you can keep bread on the table. It's a great lifestyle. Everyone here enjoys their life. And the interaction we have with ourselves, with clients, and with our artifacts and books, it's such an intellectual thing. It really is. I mean, it's visual, and it gets to the heart positively, especially a good book or really an interesting letter or even a nice visual broadside. And there's stories behind every single one of them. It's the stories that we have to keep imparting, so it's not just some papyrus or it's just whatever it is. So I think that's really, I've kind of gotten off where I wanted to be here. That's what happens.
We're going to be approaching the 150th anniversary of the start of the Civil War, aren't we?
We're in it now. Toward the end of it.
Yeah, we're toward the end of it.
Next year is the end.
Has that fact helped at all?
No, it really has not.
It hasn't got any mileage
because there was
out of
no
it.
national play for it. If we had a national commission like back in the centennial years in the early 60s, yes, there may have been more to it. But there was nothing national that empowered the Civil War in everyone's mind. A couple of things here and there on PBS and Discovery and History channels.
Ken Burns had some kind of a special.
Yeah, exactly it. But it really has not taken off in that regard. I don't know what part of it could be that, right after 9/11, and here I am immersed in 19th century Civil War, and all of a sudden that was just almost irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, yikes, Civil War, my area, is irrelevant now. Now we're in a new world. This is really something new. And it's come back a little bit, and I feel a little bit better about it now. But again, it's getting younger people to get involved in something old like that. That's going to be the basis of the future in that regard.
Wasn't the Civil War the first major war that had balloons?
Yeah. Lowe was the balloonist who went up and,
Right.
and looked. Yes, he was.
Some of that stuff is fascinating. There's a great book on the history of ballooning in the Civil War that I'm going to read one day.
Well, the thing about Civil War that's so fascinating, really,
Yeah.
is that there's so many human stories there.
Yeah.
And
Brother against brother.
yeah, brother against brother positively, neighbor against neighbor sometimes, but that there were so many interesting characters there, so many stories involved. And of course it was that, as it's always said, first modern war, there were certainly modern elements to it, so we can relate to that. But the people are no different than we are today.
Yeah.
It's so relevant because many of us of this age, we knew of Civil War veterans who were still alive.
That's right.
And now gone. I think there's one widow left now in Georgia.
That's it?
I think that's it. You know what happened there is that to keep the pensions, an old geezer of 89 would marry his 12-year-old niece. They could be in different states, they could be whatever, but they were married so that the niece could get the pension. So this young thing in Georgia is still getting a pension.
You know, she was like 12 years old when she got married or something. That's pretty funny.
But Civil War is really relevant to the human condition. And that's what I've found that I can impart to people, and they like it for that.
Take a little look at our association from your eyes and talk about some of the people who you see as possible rising stars in the trade. Do you know anyone in the area where you are or at the book fair that you think this person is going to be okay?
Someone's going to be unhappy with me for saying, "Hey, Dan, you didn't remember me." And I guess right now that neuron is not going off that I see that. I mean, I see someone like Stuart Lutz, for instance, in the Professional Autograph Dealers Association, and the Rabs in the autograph world who are young. Part of it is that, frankly, we lost our only kid 5 years ago. Yeah. And that really changed, how could it not change one's life?
It's gonna change.
And the heart is out of it. I still do this. I enjoy it when I'm doing it, but really, I don't care.
Yeah, it's not the way it used to be.
Yeah, and so I'm not even watching the trade that much. I'm not doing what I used to do. I'm not as involved in that regard as I used to be. So maybe I'm falling back on something, but that's kind of what's happened to me in a way. And the years before that led up to this were so difficult that I was kind of imploding and staying at home more and doing things that way enough to keep business going. I'm sure there are, and I'm sorry if I'm not remembering you, but there it is.
Well, that's okay. You don't have to remember. How much longer do you think you're going to be in this crazy business? We don't have to retire.
No. Well, because my dad was a geriatrician, as I mentioned, and he pounded into me, you can't retire from something, you must retire to something. Well, you're gone. But that's also a lifelong adventure. You have to have something outside your business that you enjoy. Now, for many of us in here, and certainly it's with me, I enjoy my business because I enjoy the history. That's what brought me in the first place. So that's my hobby as well. My business is my hobby and vice versa. So I don't see myself really ever getting out of it. I have too much knowledge, and why not keep that going? And the thing that I am enjoying is finding the right spot for the right piece. Ralph Newman always pounded into me, follow the money. Yeah. And,
he's right, man. Follow the money.
He's right.
he couldn't
but at the same
have said it
time,
anymore.
if you can follow the money, but also maybe hold back enough to try to put something in the right spot, because we have to think of the artifacts and the books. And
I agree.
We have to think of their needs, not only ours. So I think that's important for all of us to remember and see if we can find the right spot for it.
Would you believe we've gone through 30 minutes? It really goes fast,
Doesn't it? I thought we were just starting.
I know. Dan, thanks so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. Go out and sell some books.